outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this room, you are also consenting to being filmed by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can members and officers please ensure that you press the microphone for speaking and turn off when you have finished. Can I move to the agenda, please? Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies so far for Councillor Gould.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declaration of interest by councillors. The monitoring officer has granted dispensations to all members for the item MC/19/7, which is the draft local plan. Are there any other declarations? Sorry, Councillor Field?
Yes, on the local plan, I did discuss with the monitoring officer the issue that I am a trustee of a trust that has an interest in an application in the Baber area, but was convinced that that is at best a personal interest. There's no financial implications for me, and particularly the issue is that the site is within the Baber part of this, and they have already, I believe, looked at and approved the plan. So he was confident that I don't have any issues that should cause me to retire from the chamber or any such take any such action.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I was a member of the Stowupland Neighbourhood Plan Working Group.
Thank you very much. Item 3, MC/19/5, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 20th of May 2019 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Could I have a proposer?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second.
Thank you. So we'll take a vote. Those for the minutes? So those for? Thank you. Thank you, that's carried. Item number 4, the Chairman's announcements. I refer you to paper MC/19/6 to be noted. Councillor Otten?
Yes, it's a query. I think I did email you and Councillor Morley, because I was a bit surprised that there was nobody at the presentation to Chris Fry, somebody who was leaving this council after 29 years. So I just wondered whether you had made any alternative arrangements to wish him well.
Thank you, Chair. I was en route from Cambridge at the time, and I rang him and spoke to him personally and discussed it with him, and we also signed and sent him a card.
Councillor Phillips?
As a joint ward member for Needham Market and also the town mayor this year, I'd like to thank Councillor Susan Morley and her team for the donation of the flagpole. Thank you.
Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify under the Leisure Contract Working Party that the Task and Finish Group will look at ways of taking activities out into the community?
I'm sorry, you've moved on to the next item. Can we just leave that for a sec?
Oh, too keen. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So item agenda number 5, the leaders' announcements. I would like to invite Councillor Morley to present her tabled update.
Thank you, Chair. Attach my leaders' report and I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Wellham, do you want to get back to your point?
Thank you. Sorry I jumped up too soon. Yeah, it's to do with the Leisure Contract Working Party. And when we met before as a task and finish group, we were looking at ways of taking activities out into the community, particularly in the rural areas. Will this task and finish group look at more than just the centres at Stowmarket and Stradbrook?
Shall I take that?
Councillor Fatman, would you like to answer?
Thank you for your question. I think we need to take that to the task and finish group. That's what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to obviously have presentations from both the contracts, the people who are asking for the contracts. Okay, so we'll take it all up at that time.
Councillor Eburn, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Chair. Could I thank through you, Councillor Morley, for providing a written report, a leader's report, albeit a few minutes before the meeting. I hope that in the future that we'll get a leader's report slightly more in advance, so that if there's any queries on it, we can raise those questions in advance. Could I also ask whether we'll be receiving portfolio holder reports on a quarterly basis? And thirdly, I would have hoped to attend the LGA conference, but unfortunately aren't able to due to my illness. So I hope that those people attending will be able to provide a full report to Council, so that we can all benefit from those visits. Thank you.
Councillor Morley, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, portfolio holder reports will be coming quarterly. And yes, we will provide an update to the LGA conference. You just need to bear in mind that the sessions that I attend may well be different to the sessions that, say, John or Gerard attend. So,
are there any other questions? Right, so we're moving on to agenda item 6. To receive notifications of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. We have received a 47 valid signature petition regarding planning application DC 19-01558 in Thornham Magna. This will be dealt with through the usual planning process. Thank you.
Item number 7, questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Item number 8, questions by councillors in accordance with the council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. Again, none received.
Item number 9, MC 19-7, Baber and Mid-Suffolk Draft Local Plan, Preferred Options. Before I invite Councillor Burns to introduce this report, I would like to remind Council that the report is as it stands before going out to consultation. Apart from typographical and factual errors, members should focus on the policies within the report and avoid getting into any specific issues relating to members' wards. Those matters should be raised and fed in as part of the consultation. Thank you. I would like to invite Councillor Byrne, Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce paper MC 19-7 and move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, what is being presented today is a draft joint local plan preferred options document to go out for consultation. It's the second Regulation 18 stage that is proposed to be undertaken by both Mid-Suffolk and Baber District Councillors, following the options consultation, which took place for 12 weeks in 2017. Many comments were made to this previous consultation, which, together with engagement with councillors, changes to national policy and guidance, and a developing evidence base have informed this version of the document. The joint local plan is made up of 3 parts, the first covering the objectives and strategic policies, the second the non-strategic policies, also known as development management policies, and the third covering settlement policies, site allocations and maps. The plan covers the period from the 1st of April 2018 to the 30th of March 2036. It is important to remember that the joint local plan must be in conformity with the National Planning Policy Framework, and that neighbourhood plans must also be in conformity with the NPPF and with the strategic priorities set out in the joint local plan as the plan progresses towards adoption. The local plan will replace all existing planning policies in Mid-Suffolk and has common joint policies with Neighbourhood District Council. The housing requirement for Mid-Suffolk over the plan period is 10,000 homes, and this equates to 556 homes per year, a significant proportion of which already have planning permission. This housing requirement is based on the government's standard method for calculating housing need, which is informed by the 2014-based government household projections and an affordability ratio for the district. There are 4 main themes in the joint local plan covering housing, the economy, the environment and infrastructure. The key housing matters include ensuring the plan responds to market delivery, as this needs to be a deliverable plan. The reviewed settlement hierarchy and spatial distribution will provide greater certainty through site allocations and settlement boundary reviews. Affordability is a key issue, and the plan currently proposes 35% affordable housing on major developments of 10 or more homes or 0.5 hectares or more in area. That is all subject to viability. There are also policies to approach housing design, which includes meeting space standards and adhering to building for life criteria. The spatial distribution has been informed by consultation feedback, the availability and deliverability of sites, physical constraints along with infrastructure capacity and opportunities to improve infrastructure. The plan approach is a combination of market/rural balance focus and development along strategic transport corridors, notably the A14. There is a historic surplus of employment land with a locational focus on the most important strategic employment areas and flexibility along strategic corridors. Retail is prioritised to Stowmarket with a focus on development within town centre boundaries. Protecting and enhancing the environment is a really important component, and there are a number of policies that seek to achieve this, together with adapting to and mitigating the impacts of climate change. There are also policies in respect of biodiversity, landscape, the historic environment, sustainable construction and design, and energy provision. The plan recognises that there are existing capacity limits on infrastructure, and therefore has incorporated evidence from an infrastructure delivery plan which will be published alongside the consultation. It is important that the appropriate level of new infrastructure is secured through new development, maintaining a focus on health, education and transport, whilst ensuring the plan is viable and deliverable. You are not being asked to approve this plan for adoption. I'm asking you to approve it for consultation. During that consultation, you may well also be involved in preparing or helping others prepare responses. That might be individual residents, communities, parish councils and various groups and organisations. The consultation is open, so everyone, and in due course, it's open to everyone, and in due course, when all the responses have been considered, you will have the next stage in the production of the new joint local plan, the draft submission version, which will be in front of you for approval. Some have suggested that this is not ready to go out, but as I've said, this is a consultation stage and not a final submission. A couple of months delay now will just add a couple of months to the final adoption, and we cannot afford to delay any more. The consultation period falls over the summer holiday period, and for that reason, Neighbourhood District Council on Tuesday voted to extend the period for a further 2 weeks to give a 10-week consultation period, so that gives plenty of opportunity for comment. And I am going to suggest a small amendment to the recommendation under the 16. If you look at recommendation 3.1, I'm suggesting that it reads that the Baber and Mid-Suffolk draft joint local plan preferred options document June 2019, Appendix A, be approved for a 10-week consultation. That will take care of the recommendations. The reason for the decision mentions an 8-week public consultation, but as that's just the reason for the decision, I don't think there's any need to alter it there, though you can if you want to scribble the correction. So, I would like to propose the recommendations set out on page 16, recommendations 3.1 and 3.2, that we do approve this draft joint local plan for consultation, and that the corporate manager, strategic planning, in consultation with the leader of the council and the cabinet member for planning, be authorised to make consequential amendments to the consultation document arising from 1, removal of drafting and technical errors and typing mistakes, and 2, improvements to the layout of the document. And I can say that one of those improvements to the layout will be to separate the Baber and Mid-Suffolk key service centres, core villages, hinterland villages, hamlets, etc., out into a Baber block and a Mid-Suffolk block, rather than have them mixed together as they are at the moment. So, that's it, and I seek a seconder for that motion, please.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this document has been, it appears, a long time in the coming, but that is because it has regularly picked up amendments by government and obviously the NPPF revision. So that this plan actually is as up to date as it possibly can be at this stage. And I'm more than happy to second Councillor Byrne's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendation, if I may. And being of a forward planning type of person, you will find the wording of that amendment in your late papers at page 1. And the only slight change to that is that the wording should say before noon on Friday the 5th of July 2019. So that would give 10 days. I the reason for putting forward this amendment is that we haven't been able to review the allocations maps within this document. For some reason, at a political level, we've been able to see the content of the policies, but we've had and been able to review those prior to publication, but had no sight of the allocations maps. And that is something that has raised a lot of concern amongst communities. Firstly, I think is extremely disappointing, and I had hoped that we would be working with a bit more consensus across this council. And so it's disappointing that we hadn't had sight of those beforehand. But hopefully this amendment will help to allay that. And it'll also help to allay the fears of communities such as those in and I notice the member for is not here today, Hawley and Stowupland, where they had neighbourhood plans, but the neighbourhood plan work hasn't been reflected in those allocation maps. And when I asked about this, I was given a kind of quote that it's all about the data that supports this, not the communities. I'm more about the communities rather than the data. So I would really hope that we can accept this amendment, and I'd look for a seconder. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second the amendment and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne, do you accept this amendment?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm perfectly happy to accept it, and I'd like to reassure Councillor Eban that I hope that even though the consultation or the extension that you're asking for noon on Friday the 5th, which is a very modest little extension, but probably means quite a bit to some people. I think we have to do that for the sake of the people who've got to put this plan together. We are aiming for a 22nd of July release or start for the consultation. And it would be a great shame to delay that any further. But we will, of course, be open to any consideration during the course of the consultation period. And I would think that the sort of changes that you're talking about, I mean, the I1, for example, and which one, Stowupland? Yeah. A resolution to those difficulties will be found, I'm sure. But it is certainly true that whilst we are looking after our residents and our communities here, we do have to base some of these things on evidence, and provided sites can be found that can be evidenced to be sustainable in the terms of this document and viable in the terms of this document, I see no reason why those changes can't be made during the course of the consultation period.
Thank you. We'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, so you actually, Council has to approve the amendment, so we're putting that to the vote, then we will go back for the debate, so you'll be able to pick up from the original debate with the amended motion. Yeah, we still have, in the Constitution it says that we have to ask Council, and the only way we can ask you is by voting.
So all those in favour of the amendment?
Of the amendment reserved his right to speak, and at the moment that hasn't happened. Nobody else has actually given the opportunity to speak to the amendment.
Chair, through you, it's because Councillor Byrne accepted that amendment, therefore there is no debate. Thank you.
So all those in favour of the vote, in favour of the amendment? Thank you, that is carried. Right, we'll return to the original report as amended, and we can begin the debate. Councillor Palsmore.
Yeah, there we go. No, yes. This is really a question. One of the really important things, if we have any consultation about anything in public life, it's really important that it is meaningful and that we listen to what people say and try and address their concerns. And that's going to be one heck of a challenge. Anything to do with planning, I suspect you could have infinite views about everything. So I really wanted to ask the portfolio, in order to work with people and bring communities along with us, just in public, your views that this will really be a meaningful consultation. That's not meant to be a silly question, because I think some people get very, very sceptical about consultations all over the place. So I really do hope we will be able to work together and make a tangible difference, improvement to the proposals at the moment. One of the things I'm concerned about, that I'll be looking at carefully personally and with those in our ward, things like water resources, scarce natural resources, and how we can work together on that. And the other issue that I've always had about planning, it's a guideline, it is not absolutely set in stone, it's a very important document, but of course there are villages and more remote communities that sometimes do want some development, and so on. We need to spread this out to work with everybody, particularly about giving opportunities for young people. I probably ought to say first-time buyers now to get on the housing ladder, and it's really important that we are able to help deliver that as a council, because certainly it's about opportunity for people, those who wish to get on the property ladder, as well as those who obviously wish to rent properties.
Councillor Madsen, was you first?
Oh, I got the first go. Sorry, I thought Councillor Stringer was before me. Yeah, I just wanted to thank the chair first, and then to thank Councillor Byrne for responding to one of the particular points that the joint member working group picked up was to actually separate out the two sets of settlements, and in fact I think quite a number of other things have been amended, and that process was very collaborative between members, irrespective of politics, and the officers, and that was all very productive, which just makes it all the more disappointing that not the same has been carried out as regards the maps. In fact, in the working group, we were promised the maps a week earlier than they in fact emerged. So that's the downside, unfortunately.
Councillor Stringer?
Thank you, Chair. Now that I'm not going to risk losing the amendment, I'll use most of the speech I was going to use. What's really interesting about this process is I was involved in the working party looking at the written word. And the written word of this paper is something I'm immensely proud of, and it's probably one of the single best things this council's done in a number of years. What's a real pity is that we lost it right at the end by publishing a completely flawed set of maps. And the reason they're flawed is not picking holes in officers' work that they've done. I really applaud all the work that's been done. It's because publishing the maps in the way that we have now published them proves to a number of communities that for the last 2 years we've completely ignored them. And I'm not talking about huge allocations and all this. It's those smaller communities that were encouraged 2 years ago. Please put your submissions into this council for where we can move a settlement boundary around, so you can have a small amount of development in your settlements. Quite right thing to do. So all the ones I represented, we had a good old consultation, loads of pictures up in village halls. Thank you to the team for supplying me some very large maps. Really helpful. We gave that information back over 18 months ago. And since then, there has been radio silence, right up until the point these documents were then published. The second I saw them, I pleaded with both portfolio holders on both sides of these two councils to please don't publish because it will cause damage. The damage is already being caused. I have a number of resignations from parish councils already. And it's a huge shame that we had a brilliant document right at the start and we've lost it by publishing so early to some of these communities. And why it's so ridiculous is we've now put settlement boundaries in some very small locations where the only place that apparently they can now have development in the future is in their children's play area. We've ignored the brownfield sites they identified to us, completely ignored them, and put the site where there's gorgeous 150-year-old oak tree. And it's really like, you know, we've lost it at the last. So I hope that we can, in very short term, redress some of these anomalies and get these ironed out pretty quick, because actually I agree with the leader in her interview on the television the other day when asked what it's like to negotiate policies within a relatively hung council. The leader said it means you need to discuss a lot more up front rather than wait till you get to the chamber. I really wish we'd have discussed the proposals maps in here an awful lot more up front, or indeed at all up front. Thank you.
Councillor Byrne, would you like to answer any of that?
I'd like to. Whether I can or not is another matter. First of all, can I just respond to Councillor Passmore, if he could remind me what he said.
It's about making sure the consultation
it's meaningful over the
will be
period.
taken into account, otherwise there's no point doing it.
Tim, if by all means, certainly, from my point of view, it has to be meaningful. What is the point of a consultation? It's a 10-week consultation. It's a lengthy, by normal standards, a lengthy one. We're open to anything from everybody. We're bound by statute, as you well know, in certain cases, and some things are just not possible. But I don't see why most things can't be possible on this occasion. I mean, if we want some, Tom, are you willing to add anything to that, so far as the answer to Councillor Passmore is concerned? Yep.
Through you, Chair. Yes, I mean, as Councillor Byrne has said, the consultation is a genuine one. We've extended the period. The absolute anticipation is that we act in accordance with the range of other policies that the Council has had. Council adopted its statement of community involvement on planning matters. It also, in March, adopted its community strategy. Both of those things point strongly towards listening to our communities, reflecting what it is that they want. I recognise that there's some tension between saying that and the comments by Councillor Stringer about the responses to the previous consultation, but I think we'll have to pick those up with him individually, separately. But it is absolutely a meaningful consultation, and the more that we hear from our communities, the more evidence that we have of what our communities really want, the more weight that we have to represent their desires as we take a document into examination process.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. And for Councillor Matheson, I think that it is going to be very important in future for us to collaborate as closely and as openly as possible with members of the opposition. And I will certainly, for my part, try to make sure that that does happen. Councillor Stringer, a flawed set of maps. Yes, in some cases, I believe that's possibly the case. Probably certainly the case. Sorry, I don't mean to be flippant by saying possibly the case. It may well be the case. I don't think it proves that we've ignored your communities. And I do think that in our present position, it gives us the opportunity of listening to your communities yet again, if I can put it that way. It's a shame from your point of view that we have to. But I think it is possible that some of the maps can be redrawn to go round your 150-year-old oak trees. I'm not sure, but I think such things are important. That play areas We ought not to be developing when there are brownfield sites close by. If that proves to be possible, then I'm sure we will do our best to accommodate you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Field?
Thank you, Chair. My view, I really think, is that the local plan is many years overdue with insufficient resource applied, and government delays and revisions to the MPPF have not helped. We've been left exposed to speculative market-driven developments, proposals in a supposedly plan-led environment that actually lacks an up-to-date plan. Many of our wards have suffered development residents would have us resist. In an environment where the number of houses that must be accommodated and the expected distribution across the districts have just not been known. My group believes that it's essential to get development back to a plan-led position as soon as is reasonably possible, and for that reason support the idea that the current document should go to consultation. Further months of delay would leave all new build for the next 20 years determined before the plan is completed. However, we do have some significant reservations and issues that we feel should be addressed. Firstly, the recent progress has been rushed, and I doubt that many of us have given the document the attention and detailed examination it warrants. That might be particularly true of new councillors. It must be clear that we are not going to be told later on that there's no significant deviations from the current text, just topographical corrections and minor changes to language, and that's all that can be accommodated without invalidating the process. I hope that the answers to Councillor Passmore's question means that's not so, but it's a fear, something I've certainly experienced in the past. I feel the maps have some defects. I haven't looked at them as extensively as perhaps Councillor Stringer has, but developments already approved are not shown on the plans, and in some areas village boundaries have not been extended to cover those developments already approved, in fact some that are currently being built out. That gives a false impression of the status of such developments. Secondly, developments rejected by development control are shown in the plan as proposals without any differentiation for those yet to be considered. This will give a false view to developers and probably inspectors that it is reasonable for, or in the administration's wish, that such sites should progress. The course of action for neighbourhood plans adopted or closing in on that status should also be made clear. We do not want to see dramatic changes in numbers destroy the value of dedicated community work, or to encourage the view that such plans are a waste of time. However, neither would we want to see them as a successful move to resist development based on housing allocations that are known to be low. I'm not absolutely clear whether the Green Amendment really resolves all my issues. I guess with the extension of the time by a small amount, I'm inclined to move more in that direction. But I would point out that Friday the 5th is the end of next week, and a number of us are actually off on a conference, which I hope is hard work, not a jolly, but I'm sure it will take most of our time, and that we all need to contribute to that particular process. I personally feel that if we approve the document today, as a minimum, some covering note should go with it that points out those issues, particularly the one that says that plans that have been rejected once or twice, perhaps, by this council, should not be given the same weight by any other authority, for instance a planning inspector, as areas that are purely new, have not yet been discussed in any serious way. So on that basis, I guess, certainly I will be supporting the document, but as you've heard, with considerable reservations, and we'll hope that we can get some real progress over the next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carter?
Sat here as I am, I have a genuine fear of going through this document. We appear to be not only just failing to misunderstand, but fundamentally damaging any trust that we might have with certain communities. We are nodding towards local government with the local neighbourhood plans, but we are not acknowledging there's basic needs of members within our community. And as Councillor Possible was saying before, that there are certain people who have a want and need to be on the housing list. But from what I understand, there are many, many more people who would give anything to be on the housing list, to be able to afford to be actually to move up and own a property, have many jobs, but we're not, no matter how low we get the housing, no matter how low we set the bar for a price, they're not going to be able to attain it. We need to be doing much more for the social housing, genuine social housing, and we need to be addressing these. We need to be addressing the holes in the floor rather than trying to pave over them. So, yeah, I just do have a fear that we're doing this. We're going to be putting extensive funding, extensive resources into a document which is outdated and not representing of what is really needed at its current date.
Councillor Berman, do you want to come back to that?
Well, I'd like to come back to a small extent on Councillor Field's, one or two of Councillor Field's comments. I accept that the end of next week is not very far away, and there's a distinct limit to what we can expect ward members to submit by way of correction to the maps. But what isn't caught next week can certainly be caught in the next 10 weeks or the 10 weeks following the 22nd of July. And I certainly hope it would be. For reassurance that sites that we've already refused are not included in the plan, and thereby, if they are, giving inspectors a false impression of our opinion of them, as it were, I will ask Tom or Rob to answer that one, if he will. But before he does, can I just say to Councillor Carter that your points are well made. I'm not sure how much the local plan as it stands can address them. The fact that it's cost a considerable amount of money to get this far, and it will cost yet more to complete the job, is certainly true, but it is something that we just have to do. We cannot avoid that, and so it isn't expenditure that could be steered in a different direction, however important that direction might be, and I don't doubt the importance of the direction you were talking about. I will discuss it with the officers and see how we might be able to address such things, but thank you for making the points anyway. Could I ask Rob Hobbs to respond to Councillor Field?
Thank you, and for you, Chair. Can I just remind councillors that this local plan has a base date of the 1st of April 2018, that sites that have been granted planning permission since that date won't necessarily be, well, they won't be shown in the maps unless they were identified previously in the Strategic Housing and Employment Land Availability Assessment. And also that for hinterlands and hamlets, the settlement boundary has been drawn around sites that would have had planning permission, but they aren't shown because we're not showing site allocations at that level. And can I also remind councillors that site allocations is what the local plan seeks to do. Some allocations, as I've just alluded to, will have planning permission, some will not. But in terms of the weight that's applied, if this plan is approved by council, then it will have limited weight because it's still quite an early stage in the plan process.
Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've just wanted to ask about the subject again of neighbourhood plans. Firstly, it's a shame, I think, that this document wasn't published in March. I think this has been a long time in coming, and we should have got this document out for consultation before the local elections, and I see there was no good reason to delay it until now. But I do feel that the communities that I represent feel that they've been ignored, given that they've put a lot of work into their neighbourhood plans, and this hasn't been represented in this document. In fact, to the point that when they looked at the document, they just said, why should we respond if our comments, you know, all the work we've done on a neighbourhood plan hasn't been taken into account thus far? Is it even worth us responding? To which, of course, I say yes, you know, absolutely everybody should respond. But I think communities feel they've undertaken work on neighbourhood plans in good faith, but yet it's not been shown within these documents to date. And but I will be voting for this tonight because I do feel this should have been put forward long ago and definitely before the elections. And it's a shame it's just taken so long to get to this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. As expected, I want to say a few words about Stowupland because people in Stowupland were flabbergasted when they saw the plan with the two unexpected large housing sites. So I just want to say a little bit about those. One of them has been a recent planning application in respect of that piece of land for up to 60 homes, and this was put in by a fairly aggressive developer, not unknown to Stowupland. And as part of that application for 60 homes, that prospective developer offered a lovely meadow, which has got local significance, offered that as a gift to the parish. Now we see that the draft proposals map has encompassed that into a building site and suggested 100. It would be such a shame if we lost that meadow, but I fear the damage is done because it is now shown as a potential housing site. And I think we should have been a bit more careful about how we drew those maps. I leave it there. I'm really worried that we're doing this sort of thing. Another plot in the village covers the allotments. Well, we ought to be protecting allotments, not suggesting houses are built on them.
Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask for some clarification around how much weight in planning terms the joint local plan has now that it's in the public domain, the draft joint local plan has now that it's in the public domain, and how that will change once it's sent forward for consultation?
Robert, do you want to answer this?
Through you, Chairman. It at the moment will have limited weight in planning decisions. That weight will grow as the plan emerges and goes through the consultation process. And we have today, for example, in relation to an appeal in I in relation to land which is allocated here, we've clarified that position to the Inspectorate in our submissions on that appeal. So it will evolve and change, but at the present point in time, and until it progresses further, decisions will inevitably have to attract limited weight to this document at the present point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you. Yes, a couple of points. I'm sure listening to the debate from my colleagues, they were saying that this should have come through before the election. Well, I think actually Rob, I'm sure, can answer why that didn't come forward, because there were certain bits of information that they were still collating, and it would have been inappropriate at that time. So I'm sure that can be answered at a later date. As regards the maps that have come out, yes, indeed, it was unfortunate that they've come out late. But I've made a note of what I need to say, and I'm sure we've got 40 councillors here that can all make their notes. And hopefully with the extension that's been recommended, that we can all get that information back quickly enough. So I do think, whilst time is of the essence, I think we will all have the opportunity to put the motions, if we need any amendments, on the maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? So, David, do you want to do a sort of summing up?
Well, it does occur to me, thank you, Chairman, that one or two of the speakers have not been answered. Councillor Eburn, your disappointed neighbourhood plan compilers. Yes, I fully understand that, and at the risk of you thinking I'm sitting on the wrong side of the floor, I do rather agree with that comment. However, having said that, it has to be realised that we draw a line, we have to draw a line at a particular point so far as developing this plan is concerned. The development of neighbourhood plans, they've all started at different times. They're rolling around in a tumbler at the moment, and some are at later stages than others. The ones that are not yet formulated, we can't do anything about. The ones that have had their made their allocations, given their decisions, but have not yet reached a stage of submission. We can certainly think about those, but I think one of the officers would be better placed than I am to answer that particular question. I might ask Tom or Rob if Rob would like to do that in just a minute. Keith, I don't believe the damage has been done already. I think it can be healed. I think we can improve matters so far as things like your Stowupland plan and allocating sites that are unsuitable, if you think that's the case. As I said before, however, it's evidence that will count as to whether these can be altered in the plan itself. And of Councillor Geek, you've had your answer, I think, to the weight of the plan. Weighting any decisions on the basis of evidence is extremely difficult in planning, as you surely know anyway. And just, you can't quantify it, that's the difficulty. It's got little weight, or it's got more weight than another one. But that's about all you can say. At the moment, it's as Councillor, not Councillor Hobbs, I'm sorry, Officer Hobbs, as you said, it doesn't have much. By the time the consultation ends and the consultation results are incorporated, it will have quite considerably more. No, it wasn't Officer Hobbs, it was Officer Isbell. I'm sorry, you gave the answer to that, and thank you for that. Summing up, I think there have been a lot of useful comments. I think that we will take them all on board. I think we will be able to satisfy quite a number of them. Others may be a little difficult, but we'll do our best. And certainly I will put whatever weight I can behind making sure that the local plan does reflect neighbourhood plans as accurately as possible, because neighbourhood plans are something I feel quite passionate about. I don't think the process is foolproof. I think the government could improve matters there in the fullness of time, but the Localism Act as it stands doesn't make it any easier for us. But anyway, we are trying to approve a plan for consultation, not approve the plan itself. That's the main thrust of this evening. So thank you very much for listening and for all your contributions.
Robert, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to say something on neighbourhood plans, if I may. Just to remind, a number of neighbourhood plans have been prepared before the joint local plan has reached this stage, and we acknowledge that some of these have been produced without an indicative housing requirement figure. This was introduced following the NPPF in 2018, and what we've been doing is, without the figure, we've been responding to the consultations at Regulation 14 stage, and been trying to provide an indicative number, or at least commenting to say that maybe the plan isn't providing for enough, or perhaps needs to have another site put in, and this is all on record. So on page 43 to 44, we've now published required minimum neighbourhood plan figures for all those areas producing a neighbourhood plan, which can guide the production. And also we would like to continue to work with neighbourhood plan groups, and we are intending to have meetings with neighbourhood plan groups very soon as part of the consultation, as they continue to develop their neighbourhood plans alongside the joint local plan. And we fully anticipate that the next stage of the local plan will then incorporate more detail from those neighbourhood plans that have been progressed further. Can I also respond to Councillor Wellham on the point about the meadow. Policy LP 28 on page 127 of the joint local plan says that designated open spaces will be protected in the same way as designated open spaces in the local plan. So those identified in the neighbourhood plan have the protection. It's just not shown on the map. So the policies are in place. And equally, the two sites being proposed in Stowupland can be developed in a way that green space is a key component of those allocations, because the allocation is for the site area with the indicative housing requirement identified within the plan. So that's all I'd say. Thank you.
We have had the summing up, so I'm just going to go for the vote. So all those in favour of the recommendations as amended? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, MC/19/8, the publication of the Mid-Suffolk Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Byrne, Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce the paper MC/19/8 and move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Housing delivery is a recognised national issue. Various government initiatives have been undertaken reform of the planning system to help stimulate and support increased levels of house building. The housing delivery test was published in February 2019. This measures the net additional dwellings provided within a local authority area against the number of dwellings required over the previous 3 years and shows the performance for each local authority in England. The housing delivery test results identified Mid-Suffolk District as achieving 81% of the total number of dwellings required over the period 1st of April 2015 to 31st of March 2018. In addition, the housing delivery test national results for Mid-Suffolk require the addition of a 20% buffer to the figure of 556 per year in calculating the 5-year housing land supply requirement. As a consequence of not meeting 95% of this housing requirement, the Council is required now to produce a housing delivery test action plan within 6 months from February 2019. So that is by August of 2019. We have to publish this housing delivery test action plan. And it's to incorporate a range of measures that will support increased housing delivery. Appendix A to this report represents Mid-Suffolk's Housing Delivery Test Action Plan, which also incorporates data in the form of Appendix 1, thereby meeting this requirement. I draw your attention to the general recommendations on pages 43 and 44. I think that's hopefully the same in this one. Paras 3.4 and 3.5, is that correct? Yes. And particularly the 15 bullet points on page 125 of our papers now. Also, please note the section on SIL, which is on page... I'm sorry about this, it's just that I'm transcribing from a Baber paper.
It's 119.
119. Oh, still on page 119, thank you. In summary, this is something we had to do, and it's been done, so I move the recommendation for approval and look for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. This is now open for questions and debate. Councillor Stringer?
Thank you, Chair. First, I have a question before I want to say any more. Could I ask who carries out the actions within the report that says work being carried out now? Who carries it out at the moment, and who's going to carry it out in the future?
Councillor Byrne, do you have a response? Christine, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, through you, Chair. So the actions in the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan, there are 23 of them in total. 15 of these are taken from the Joint Homes and Housing Strategy, which has already been through Council, and that is a continuation of that work. For the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan, we took into account a wide range of data which informed the actions. We used the services of a consultant to give us housing market intelligence. In terms of taking these actions forward, we are forming a group of officers which will be taken across a wide spread of the council to reflect the different work streams that they are, and that is being set up at the moment.
Councillor Mansell?
I think Councillor Stringer wants to come back.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Stringer, do you want to come back?
Sorry, Chair, with the greatest respect, I don't feel my question's been answered. Who is doing it, and who is going to do it?
Through you, Chair. So there will be officers from the strategic planning team, there will be officers from the development management team, and also from the strategic housing team, really to reflect the work streams that are either already triggered and started, or the new ones which will be coming forward as a result of the study that's been put together.
Councillor Mansell?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to comment on the table which is on page 135 of the document, which is a table listing the number of stalled sites. And I'd just like a bit of clarity on the numbers in that table. I am assuming, perhaps incorrectly, that these are the stalled sites that have a live planning application currently. And I just wanted to know if they included ones that already had a lapsed planning permission, and if there are some with a lapsed planning permission, do we have the numbers of the ones that are lapsed? Thank you.
Phil or Tom, have you got an answer for that? Sorry.
What we did in terms of constructing a working database of the amount of sites that we had was we looked at everything with an outline planning permission, anything with an outline planning permission and a reserve matters, anything with a full planning permission where no commencement had started. We also picked up one site where commencement had started and then stopped. So it's a widely changing, as you're probably aware, database in that planning permissions are added all the while and things which lapse get left off by the same token. So this is something that in terms of data we fixed at the end of March, beginning of April this year in order to give to the housing delivery consultant who looked at the specialist work that we needed them to do. And clearly moving forward with the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan, this database will continue to be built on.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell, do you want to come back?
Please. Thank you for that. I understand it may just be a snapshot in time of March this year, but I don't think the question's been answered because those planning applications that have lapsed, presumably, if there are no change to material considerations for planning, will probably get their planning permission renewed quite easily, and they're not included. So I wanted to know whether there was a large proportion of sites that have got a lapsed planning permission, whether it is similar to the numbers that have got live planning applications, or whether we're only talking about half a dozen. I don't know.
Okay, Phil, would you want to answer that?
Through you, Chairman. Thank you. The situation with delivery is now that it is a material consideration in the determination of planning applications. For those sites which have lapsed permissions, it's true that that is a material consideration and we are entitled to weigh up whether or not deliverability is actually going to be achieved at any realistic point in time. So where a site has not come forward, we do expect to ask applicants extremely seriously what their intentions are and to take into account their delivery record in the district elsewhere. We are building and have a good level of intelligence around that and continue to develop that. So the answer is we will not simply as a matter of course be seeking to renew permissions that have been granted. We will obviously consider them on their merits, but the delivery record of any developer or applicant we will take into account, and where appropriate we will either recommend a very short timetable for implementation, we may decide that the site is not actually potentially going to come forward in a realistic prospect and look elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Otten?
Yeah, on page 125 or page 21 of the document, it says more actively link registered providers with land promoters. I think that's extremely important, but I need to be assured that the council does have the relevant data and that data is correct, because I think it's important that we know who all of those registered providers are and where they already do have properties. Also, a bit further down, ensuring applications are approved on time and section 106 agreements are signed off. Absolutely, we would agree with that, but it must not be without due consideration. I would hope that speed is not given over against quality. Thank you.
Councillor Carter?
I was just going to refer back to Councillor String's earlier question. I do apologise. It was just going through my head trying to work out whether or not the question was answered. Is this work currently being carried out and who is actually doing it? I understand that it's going to be done by a team and consultants in the future, but is this currently is this being done? Who's doing it? And if not, why not?
Thanks, Tom. Do you want to get this?
It's through you, Chair. I think it's quite difficult in the meeting to tease apart because there are 23 different actions. Some of those actions are being undertaken by particular individuals, some are being undertaken by other individuals. Some of them are work already in train, some of them are work that is still to be done. So just to take an example, ensuring a smarter and improved pre-application process, that's firmly within the realms of development management. There is a pre-application system. We have now run 2 surveys of the users of that pre-application system to understand, to help us to continue to refine it so that it remains an effective pre-application process that informs applications and ensures that when they come in, we can deal with them as effectively as possible. Viability testing of proposed land allocations at plan making stage, that has been undertaken. That is part of the evidence base that informs the document that you've just approved to go out to consultation. Ensuring applications are approved on time and Section 106 agreements are signed off promptly. That's a relationship between our planning officers, our legal team, our strategic housing team, our public realm team, and a range of others, our environmental health team, depending on the specific requirements within any given Section 106 and the requirement for those officers to work effectively with the developer of any given scheme. So I can say that certainly those actions which are described as work in progress, it's predominantly a relationship between our strategic planning team, our infrastructure team and our development management team, with other officers pulled in as and where necessary. Mid-Suffolk Council did approve some one-off funding to address stalled sites. One of the challenges that we had was recruiting to that, so if Councillor Stringer was seeking comfort that there was additional resource to drive forward delivery, we were unable to recruit to the posts that we did design and put out for recruitment twice. The funding for that was used to engage Navigus Planning, private consultancy firm, who have advised us on market intelligence and some of the actions that are proposed in there, such as having an annual conference with developers, having a closer relationship with registered providers and those kind of things. Julie Abbey-Taylor's team and the Housing Enabling team do have close relationships with registered providers. Pick up Councillor Otten's point. I can't say for absolute certain that they know every single one that exists, but they certainly have strong relationships with a range of registered providers, and I'm happy to pick that point up with you outside the meeting so that we can give you the confidence that that team know all of the RPs that are operating within our area. Certainly as part of the housing conference that is happening on the 11th of July, that will be another mechanism, and there are a range of mechanisms to ensure that we're working closely with the industry. One of the things that development management have very effectively put in place over the last couple of years is what we call the client-side panel, which again is a means through which officers can ensure that there is a strong working relationship with planning agents, house builders, developers and land promoters who all attend those, so that we're getting as much kind of real-time information about how the market is operating, how our services are operating, so that we ensure that we do find the right balance, fulfilling our role effectively as a regulator and ensuring that we make sound legal decisions, but also that we make those in a timely way to ensure that we aren't the cause of hold-ups within the planning process.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Chair. Well, like any action plan, we have work in progress and action plan required. I feel towards the end of the document there are rather too many action plan required notations, in particular regarding the 3 categories of stallers. So I would like to know, what is the process, because it says that the action is prior to the annual review of this housing delivery test action plan. When are we actually like to see some progress on these action plans, and would it be wise to ask perhaps that we could have perhaps a 3-month update to members in some shape or form, whether it be to the council or to members for a briefing session, because progress from our point of view, is difficult to measure unless we have a timescale.
Tom?
Yes, through you, Chair. One thing that we could do is ensure that as part of the Cabinet members' quarterly update reporting to councillors at full council, that we ensure that we update on the actions that are moving forward in the housing delivery test as part of that regular update.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn?
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that this is work that we have to do, the government's asked us to do, and I would like to get some comfort that that work is going on before sites stall, as opposed to kind of waiting to before we realise that sites have stalled. And just I just do need the sort of degree of comfort in terms of, again, I think we're talking around a lot of the same matters here, which is around capacity, really, is that officers working on this presumably have got day jobs and are actually, this is work that they're doing in addition to their normal working day. And can I have some assurance, and perhaps this is from the leader and perhaps the chief exec, that if more staff is required or needed, then that they will get them in order to fulfil the requirements of this document, because obviously, while this is something that government's asking us to do, it will actually benefit the council to actually achieve the action plan within this. And I'm just very conscious that there's no staff sat around idling at the moment, and that you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and just the comfort that they will be able to, if more staff are needed, further capacity is needed, that will be available and it will be asked for, and won't be seen as a failure to ask for it either, because we've got to ensure that this is done and done into completeness. Thank you.
Thanks. Arthur?
Thank you, Chairman. As it was thrown to me, I think it's probably appropriate that I respond. Certainly, firstly, thank you to Councillor Eburn for confirming that there are certainly no staff idling around. They are absolutely extremely busy. Having said that, this is not supplementary to the day job. This is part of the day job, and certainly for all of our approaches around growth and development, it's been the case for a long time that it's not about granting planning permissions, it's about seeing houses actually built. And I would say that whilst we've had to produce this document by virtue of a government initiative, this council was here first, because you were already talking about stalled sites and the need to take activity long before government decided that we need to compose it in a specific action plan. So the short answer to your question, Councillor Eburn, is yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer?
Thank you, Chair. It's very sort of timely, actually, that I was chosen now. Before I go on to say what I'm going to say now. Councillor Burns started your submission off by saying it's a hugely recognised national issue. Actually, failure to delivering houses is hugely recognised locally, because when you fall into deficit in housing delivery, it gets noticed through the planning system when, to some people's concerns, all hell begins to break loose. And we've seen some of the worst extents of that in Mid-Suffolk, and I hope I never see some of that again. So that's why I was asking the question as to who's doing the work now and who's going to be doing the work in the future, because I have some serious concerns about workload within the current system and situation. And it's actually reflected in the consultant's report here. It says that we lag behind a lot of other authorities in how long it takes us to achieve planning permission. Well, I'm concerned about that if an awful lot of these action plans to be required, action plan required, is going to be putting extra work on the very team that will need to be delivering those planning permissions, which is why I think 5 budgets in a row we asked you to consider resource into this, and then 2 years ago you agreed, and I encouraged others to agree with your budget for that year, but of course we failed to recruit to the post. And the reason we failed to recruit to the post is because we only offered it for 1 year. There aren't many people going to be jumping into a job if it's just seen as 1 year. So I would like to propose an amendment, and it's 3.3, that says sufficient resources be found to make sure the outcomes of this plan be met. And I look for a second.
Councillor Carter, are you seconding this? David, are you happy to accept this?
it sounds good to me, Andrew. But I'm not the, I would have to defer to the chief exec on this one. He's the man in charge when it comes to employing staff.
Arthur, would you like to answer this?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to give reassurance to Council, when you make decisions, that's my job to find the resources to implement all such decisions. But absolutely, yes. And if that means that I need to come back to you and say you can't afford to do this instead in order to deliver this, then I will do that. But I don't foresee it being a challenge. So from my perspective, it's not up to me, but from my perspective, the recommendation, the amendment is fine.
So, Councillor Byrne?
Then yes, I'm happy to accept the amendment. Thank you.
Just before...
I think Tom wants to say something.
Oh, Tom wants to say something.
Sorry, yes, just prior to the amendment, there were a couple of items, a couple of areas where I thought it might be useful to reassure councillors. So the consultant's report does talk about the length of time it takes to grant planning permission. One statistic that just came across my emails very recently was around planning performance, and particularly what is often reported to councillors is the proportion or the percentage of applications that are determined in time. And that's the kind of 13-week, 16-week deadline for approving major application schemes. One thing that isn't always reported, and one of the things that I'll be looking to bring into the quarterly performance monitoring, is the median number of days for granting those planning applications. And to show a direction of travel, I think it's useful perhaps to describe during 2017, the average number of days on major schemes was 130. During 2018, it was 135 days. Since the beginning of the year, the average time taken is 80 days. So there's been a significant improvement in the average speed at which those major schemes are brought forward and determined, and the legal agreements sorted and the actual decision issued. The other thing which may reassure councillors and give you some comfort around those actions that are already in train and some of the things that have been happening recently to drive forward delivery, the council is required to publish its annual monitoring report and its 5-year housing land supply statement, and we're currently working that up. There's still some finessing to do with some of the details on that, but the one thing which we do know at the moment is the number of completions, and it's obviously more complicated than just the completions, but within Mid-Suffolk we're looking at a number closer to 700 than 400 in terms of completions. So there's a significant uplift over the last year, which shows that some of our more significant schemes are really now starting to come through and deliver the housing that your residents really need.
Thank you. Right, before we go back to the debate, and I've got everyone who wants to answer questions, we were going to vote on the amendment. So all those in favour of the amendment? That's carried. Right, we can go back to the debate, and I believe that Councillor Passmore, you're next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. It really builds on Keith's point earlier, just a suggestion. I think it would be helpful with the action plan, given that the resources and everything else are coming together, if it were possible in that update to try and tidy up, particularly at the end there, I think there's 8 points that appear to be dependent on the annual review. If you could give an indicative date, that would help you, help us to see how progress is going forwards, all right? It is a public document, and I've been in other situations where it can be sometimes a little bit vague, not quite crisp enough, and then things drift. And I know you're all working extremely hard on that, but with Arthur's refreshed mandate of resources and so on, I'm sure it won't be a problem. And I think we'd all benefit from that. Thank you.
Councillor Mellor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I very much welcome the introduction of this action plan and all the work and the action that's going to go on with it. Bearing in mind my colleague Councillor Scarf's comments a few moments ago, can I suggest that we bring this and look at it as a scrutiny committee before the end of the year? Thank you.
Councillor Field?
Thank you, Chair. When faced with a vast list of things to do, I always find a good question is which ones do you actually intend to complete? I.e. which ones are actually going to make a difference? Because there seems as say, a vast list. Some things like discharge planning conditions promptly is something that one probably a guest would help, but are there any others in this great list that you're actually are going to be significant?
Thank you. Councillor Whelan?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor String has touched on some of the points I was going to make, but my concern is, and I hear this from small builders, that one of the hold-ups is around the Section 106s and getting the legal agreements all sorted out. We need to make sure that there is sufficient resources on the legal side, not just on the planning side. That's one of the queries I've got. And the other is, yeah, we're making good progress on getting our planning applications sorted, the big ones in less time. But what we don't want to do is to move people from that, from making sure it stays like that, to doing other work, when perhaps what we really need for some of the action points is people with different skills, different from the skills that are present in the authority at present. So we need to be looking to see whether that is a way forward. And the other point is, on page 125, one of the recommendations is we should create a flexible approach to tenure mix to accelerate delivery. Well, I've got real concerns about this. There's a real need for social and affordable rent houses, and we don't want those to be lost in this flexible approach.
Councillor Passmore, did you want to speak? Okay, if no one else wants to speak, we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour of the recommendations as amended? All those against? Right, that's carried. Right, moving on to item number 11, MC/19/9, Stowupland Neighbourhood Development Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Byrne, Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce this paper and move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The report before you updates Council on the progress of the Stowupland Neighbourhood Plan. It recommends that the Neighbourhood Plan be formally made, that is, adopted as part of this Council's development plan following a majority yes vote at the recent local referendum, and that a decision statement to this effect be published with immediate effect. Work on this neighbourhood plan commenced in February 2015. The plan has been through an extensive period of preparation, through 2 rounds of formal public consultation, and has been independently examined. Cabinet colleagues may recall seeing a report on this plan when it was agreed that it be advanced to local referendum. The plan was modified in accordance with the examiner's recommendations, and the referendum took place on the 6th of June. Section 4 of the report provides key information about the referendum, including the format of the question that was asked of those entitled to vote. And at paragraph 4.3, the declared result. The total number of votes cast was 419, an approximate 25% turnout. Number of yes votes cast was 388, which amounted to 93% of the total votes cast. The number of no votes cast was 30, approximately 7%, and the number of void ballot papers 1. Excuse me. Paragraph 4.6 of the report refers to the final draft decision statement, a copy of which is appended to this report. A copy will be sent to the Parish Council and also published on the appropriate page on our website. Sections 5 and 6 of the report provide details of the financial and legal implications of the decision to adopt this plan. The decision today means that the Stowupland Neighbourhood Plan becomes the 4th neighbourhood plan to be formally adopted in Mid-Suffolk. As such, it becomes part of the development plan framework for the designated area, which is the parish of Stowupland, and will be used to help determine planning applications where relevant. I commend this neighbourhood plan to you, and I ask that the Council endorses the recommendations set out at the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
I think it is.
Sorry, I was a bit slow there. Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to second that, and I'd like to congratulate the Stowupland Neighbourhood Plan Working Group on their work. And also to thank, Paul still here? He was here, yes. Paul and Paul for their help and advice, and also thank the 419 people who actually turned out to vote for the third time in 5 weeks.
Yes.
So happy to second that, and I'd like to see this brought into the planning framework as soon as possible.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? So we'll go to the vote then. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thanks very much. Item number 12, MC/19/10, nominations for appointment of directors to the Board of Mid-Suffolk Suffolk Holdings Limited. I'd like to invite Councillor Brewster, Chair of Mid-Suffolk District Council Holdings Limited, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, members, this report proposes the election of 3 new directors, Councillors Rick Mayer, Peter Gould and Paul Epnion, to the Board of the Mid-Suffolk District Council, Suffolk Holdings Limited, to fill posts that were vacated by former councillors Glenn Horn and Councillor James Story, and additionally Councillor Matthew Hicks, who initially came onto the board with the promise of a month to ensure we'd got resilience over the election period, has indicated his wish to step down from the board. The election of new directors to the holding company will ensure robust governance of the company structure, and that is retained, and I look forward to the opportunity of working with Councillors Mayer, Gould and Epion on the holding company. And I propose the recommendation at 3.1 with the reason given at 3.2, and I seek a seconder, please.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you.
Yes, happy to second.
Councillor Eben?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I ask where these positions were advertised, firstly, and secondly, could somebody answer the question with regards to political proportionality in this case? Thank you.
I don't believe there is the need, and I'll stand corrected, but I don't think there is the need for political rationality, and it's normal for the directors of the board to nominate the people to recommend to the council for approval.
Councillor Hicks?
Thank you. I'd just like to say I thoroughly enjoyed my brief tenure with the companies, but I think one has to recognise when there are more qualified people that come forward in the council, and I think we have 3 examples of people who are qualified, committed, and want to put it in the time and energy and have the time to do so. So I really welcome the fact that Councillor Peter Gould, Councillor Rick Mayer and Councillor Paul Epnion have come forward and are happy to take those posts. And I think it's good to recognise people that could do a fine job and probably better than you in such circumstances.
Thank you. Councillor Field?
Thank you. I suppose there's one comment really that accepting or understanding those comments, we have little actual knowledge of the skills of the gentleman concerned. I hope they're more than adequate, but the skills audit information, for instance, is not available, and as some are new councillors, we barely have a significant knowledge of their capabilities. I did just want to ask that it says, the comment was that the existing directors nominate new directors. Bearing in mind that there were some directors who were not re-elected, what sort of number of people were involved in that decision, could you say?
Yes, I mean, given that, there were just 2 of us left after the election to do the nominations.
Right, if no one else would like to speak, we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour? All those against? Right, so that is carried. You're off the hook, Matthew. Right, item number 13, appointment of councillors to the Shared Revenues Partnership Committee. I'd like to invite Jan Robinson, Corporate Manager, Democratic Services, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that in accordance with the joint arrangements established with Neighbourhood District Council and Ipswich Borough Council, Council is asked to appoint 2 Cabinet members and 2 substitutes to serve on the committee for the current municipal year. Political balance rules do not apply to Mid-Suffolk's appointees, and those nominations have been tabled. Thank you.
I move those nominations that have been tabled, and could I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, both of you. All those in favour? All those against? Right, that's carried. Item number 14, councillor appointments. The changes to the appointments have been tabled. Are there any others? Could I have a proposer?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose.
Thank you. Please, could I have a seconder? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll be happy to second that eventually.
Yeah. Councillor Ott, to speak?
Yeah, just to say, I'm really pleased that you took up my suggestion of having a member of the opposition group, as at least as an observer at the LGA, and it's particularly important at the Eastern Region LGA, which is somewhere where I think we need to make sure that, you know, we are a bigger, in a bigger group of fellows.
Thank you. We'll take a vote then. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. The date of the next meeting is Thursday the 25th of July at 5:30 p.m. and this meeting is over.